Okay, so if you couldn't tell already, recently I've been doing a lot of these Mythbuster videos, and I mean every single episode you guys are just totally destroying the like goal, and it's honestly insane. I can't thank you guys enough. So today I'm gonna set a like goal of 10,000 likes. If we could smash 10,000 likes, that would be insane. And just like always, if you do have a myth you would like me to feature in the next or future episodes, go down in the comments down below right now and drop a comment of the myth, and it'll have a pretty good chance of being featured if a lot of people do like it. Also, while you're down there in the comments, let me know your opinion on the brand new Respawn van. Do you think they totally ripped off Apex Legends, or was it an actual unique idea? I definitely think it is a pretty good idea. It's pretty cool, but I mean, I didn't feel like it was really necessary to add. Anyways guys, without further ado, let's begin today's episode. Jumping into the first myth is, does having an umbrella versus a glider change your hitbox because of where your arms are located? So in game, if you've never really used the umbrella as a glider, you could tell that when you do have this selected, your arms are definitely a lot closer and your hitbox might be a little bit smaller compared to the regular glider, where your arms might be out to the sides a little bit. So the main question is to see if the umbrella actually will change your hitbox based on where your arms are located. In game, when I tested this out, I got my second account to jump off the ledge with a regular glider as well as an umbrella, and when I did test this out, you could see that the hitbox actually was able to change based upon where the arms were depending on the glider. So this does confirm that you probably have a smaller hitbox, or at least not as big of a chance to be hit when you are having a regular umbrella as your glider, because your arms are basically like just straight up together rather than out to the sides where they possibly have a better chance to be hit. Overall, this is something I definitely did not know, and I feel in a regular match I will be using an umbrella rather than a regular glider. That way I don't really get shot out of the air anymore. Jumping into the next myth is, what happens if you use a Rift to Go and jump on a launch pad at the very moment where it kinda activates? Will you go higher up in the air, or will you just teleport straight up into the sky the same height as if you used a regular Rift to Go? In game, when testing this out, I placed down a launch pad and I had multiple Rift to Go's since it was creative, and I tested this multiple times to make sure I could get as accurate of an answer as I possibly could. To my conclusion, after all of my multiple attempts, every time I would jump on the launch pad and I would use the Rift to Go, it would teleport me up into the sky at the same height as if you were to just jump on the ground regularly. I thought this was pretty interesting, but I didn't really expect it to go much higher because it physically doesn't really make any sense, since the Rift to Go kind of spawns you up at almost the max height that you can jump out of. Jumping into the next myth is, what happens when you revive your teammates? Will the minimap player counter go up by a number, or will it just be the exact same as if there wasn't a player in the game? Now this was a very interesting question, because in a regular game, if you do get knocked and you do get finished by some sweaty player, obviously, the minimap counter will obviously count that player as dead and it'll go down by one. So if you do get revived, will the number go up by another one, making it so that the lobby has more players than it usually would have? In game, when I tested this out, I was actually surprised to see the answer. When I did revive my teammate and he did respawn in game, the actual player count number went up by 1 from what it previously was, as if he was still alive in the game. I thought this was actually pretty interesting, because imagine if you're in the end game and you notice that there's only like 4 players left and there's 2 of you, and then all of a sudden there's like 6 because some guy revives like his whole squad. That totally wouldn't be cool, but I guess it's definitely possible. Going into the next myth is, what happens when you throw a sneaky snowman grenade onto an AI? Ever since the flintlock was added into the game, I've been doing so many myths regarding the AIs, because you could literally move them off of their spawn pad, which is pretty fun, not gonna lie. In game though, it didn't rely on the flintlock pistol. This time I literally just threw a regular sneaky snowman grenade onto an AI when I started up the match, and sadly it basically just bounces right off of him. We did test something similar to this on a previous episode where basically I became the sneaky snowman myself, and it seemed like the AI couldn't really hit my hitbox or hit my player at all, so I think you got inspiration from that one, but overall it was a pretty interesting myth. Now this next myth wasn't really recommended by anyone, but it was something that happened to me in game that maybe some of you guys will be wondering about. This myth is, what happens when a loot llama spawns inside of a tree? Now months upon months ago, before creative, there was a llama that spawned on top of a tree in a regular match of mine, which was extremely rare back then. So this myth, it's not the same. The loot llama didn't spawn on top of the tree, but it spawned inside instead. Sadly, I didn't have the clip. I had to go back into replay mode since I did not have shadow play on at the time to save the past 5 minutes. But in game, when a loot llama spawned inside of the tree, it was a little bit glitchy, I'm not gonna lie. I was running around looting up the tree just as normal. I broke the tree, but the weird thing is that I was not able to see the loot llama until I fully turned away and looked back, and it all of a sudden popped up out of nowhere. So next time when you're gathering wood in the forest and you break one of these trees, you might want to double check to see if a llama spawned inside of it, because that was the case for me and I definitely was pretty shocked. Now the next myth is pretty interesting. This myth is, in creative mode, if you spawn a fire hydrant and enlarge it up to its max size, what happens if you break the top of it? Will water spill out at the same size as if it was still small, or will it be extra large? In game, I thought this was pretty interesting, so I went into creative mode and spawned myself a regular fire hydrant, the regular size, as well enlarged the other one to the max size it possibly could be. To my surprise, when I broke the small one, it was of course the regular size, but when I broke open the tall fire hydrant, the water that was spilling out was extra tall, and it was definitely a lot of fun to bounce on top of. But I decided to take this myth one step further to see if it really launched you up higher than you usually would on a regular fire hydrant. To test this out, I built up a couple walls with a floor to see the exact height that you could really bounce up. After testing it out a couple times, the really only height advantage you get from the extra large fire hydrant is the actual size comparison between the small and the tall, which is just about half a wall length. Overall though, I thought this was a pretty interesting creative myth and maybe something you guys could possibly use on your own creative server. Jumping into the next myth is, if your teammate dies in the ocean, will his player's revive card still be floating in the ocean, and if so, will you be able to revive him still? I thought this was a pretty interesting myth because the brand new revival system is fairly new to the game and not too many people know too much about this whole entire system itself. In game, when I tested this myth out on my own, I had my second account jump into the ocean. I then proceeded to build down towards the ocean to see if his player revival card was still there, and sadly it was not there. It basically despawned and he was out of the game for good. This is definitely something you will have to keep in mind now when you're playing duos or squads and maybe you're trolling your teammate, because you of course want to revive them into the game because it was just a friendly joke, but in this case you are unable to because it literally disappears, and they're most likely going to be mad at you now. But overall, a pretty awesome myth and definitely a very unique one that I didn't think of myself. Jumping into the next myth is, do stink bombs do damage to balloons? Now, having just one or even two balloons equipped to your player is pretty common in the regular game itself nowadays, since you could get around the map fairly quickly just by running and jumping with a single balloon. In the middle of a fight, usually in a scrim, a lot of people do use stink bombs when people are boxed up in a 1x1, so will this deal damage to your balloon and possibly make it pop? In game, when I tested this out, I used multiple stink bombs and it never really seemed to deal any damage to the balloon, at least from what I saw, because it never really popped, and I threw a good 15 to 20 stink bombs at the ground and stood right in the center of it throughout the entire time. This is good to know in game, but definitely if you are stuck in the middle of the gas, you probably want to run out because it probably is dealing a ton of damage to you by that time. Jumping into the last and final myth, this myth is, what happens if someone rocket rides you into a geyser? This myth seemed to get a whole ton of support on a previous episode of the Mythbusters, so I decided I had to really test it out. In game, when you get rocket rode over a geyser, you will end up being launched up into the air, of course, as if you were to jump on it regularly. Sadly, nothing really too special happens. Rocket doesn't get redirected up into the sky with you or straight to the ground. It's nothing really too special, sadly. Anyways, guys, that's gonna be it for today's episode. I hope you have enjoyed. If you have, make sure to leave a like. Can we try and smash 10,000 likes on today's episode? That would be insane. And also, go down in the comments below and comment a unique myth for it to have a chance to be featured in the next or future episodes. And I will see you guys next time.